Now their duties lead to the christening of a lifeboat at Montrose. The crash of the bottle is followed by a trial trip round the basin. No doubt the lifeboat has seen rougher water than this, since she was dedicated to the service of those who go down to the sea in ships. From lifeboats to an inspection of the late Captain Scott's famous ship, the Discovery. An easy transition. This fine ship is now to be used by Sea Scouts. The Queen seems to be asking practical questions about Arctic clothing. In Hyde Park, our King takes part in a great festival of empire. The parade is 9,000 strong, old and young. Here is a shot of the King and Queen at the King's College centenary celebrations. With their Majesties are the Duke of Connaught and the Archbishop of Canterbury. The King is interested in the Wheatstone telegraphic instrument. Both are fond of horses, so the day in 1929 when they watch a riding display by the police at Imber Court and give prizes to the winners must be a particularly pleasant duty. Keep an eye on the nurses in this picture. They work at the Siemens Hospital at Greenwich, and this is the opening in 1929. When the visitors leave, the nurses are determined to give the royal party an extra escort, even at the risk of adding to the outpatients department. Foundation stones are as numerous on the pages of the engagement books of royalty as daisies in springtime. This one is being laid at St Mary's Hospital, Paddington. Notice Mr. and Mrs Baldwin in the party. Well and truly laid, Your Royal Highness. Here is a newcomer to our story. The scene is Olympia, 1931, and Princess Elizabeth evidently inherits her parents' love for the horse. Our King speaks at the Mansion House in support of the cancer campaign.
We are here in your Mansion House, my Lord Mayor, in the heart of the Empire, on this, the first day of May. And we send out to those in this country and to our brothers in the Empire overseas our May Day call. I send my grateful thanks to over 1,000 Lord Mayors and Mayors, Chairmen of District Councils and Chairmen of Parish Councils who have already responded to our call for help.
A much less serious occasion is when the Queen receives purses from some very small British subjects at a St James's Palace garden party. From St James's Palace, London, to the lowlands of Scotland is a far cry. But at Stranraer, our King takes his turn at receiving purses. This is 2 years ago. In the course of the past 10 years, members of the House of Windsor have visited nearly every part of the kingdom, and our present King and Queen have done their full share of this journey. We follow them to various cities. Southampton has its new municipal offices opened by the royal couple. Southampton, the great port of the south coast, whence the liners sail for New York, Rio de Janeiro, Cape Town, and many another distant part of the world. Lincoln and the people of the Fen country see them at a Thanksgiving service for the successful completion of 11 years' work in the restoration of Lincoln Cathedral. Queen Elizabeth is Colonel-in-Chief of the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, and this fact brought her to Yorkshire in 1928 when she inspected her own regiment. Afterwards she spoke to ex-Sergeant Horfer, whose back was broken in France, and to his delight signed his autograph book. In this picture she is still in Yorkshire, and from here she takes back a little nurse doll for Princess Elizabeth. Their Majesties have often been to Scotland. In 1929, the King, as Duke of York, was in Edinburgh, representing King George V at the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. This was the year in which the Church of Scotland healed the breach, which had divided it since 1843. The same year, he and his wife were in Inverness. They are Earl and Countess of Inverness, as well as King and Queen of England. The ancient city of Perth confers its freedom on the royal couple, and Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret Rose watch their mother presenting new colours to a Scottish regiment. Ulster gave the royal couple a welcome which reflected the passionate loyalty to the throne of the 6 counties. It was the wish of King George V, when he was head of the House of Windsor, that each of his sons should specialise in one or more aspects of our national life. Our present king is particularly associated with British industry and with all matters of concern to the younger generation. At Glasgow, the king gains practical experience as a tram driver. Transport and communications are the nerves of modern industry, and in 1934 at Mount Pleasant, the king and queen, accompanied by the Postmaster General, open a new sorting office. The Queen seems to want the fun of dispatching a postal packet, but the King can't resist the temptation to steal the job for himself. At Newport in Wales, they take a trip round the docks. Then they cross on a novel transporter bridge. That was in 1924, and in the same year, our king gets into overalls at a margarine factory and watches various processes of manufacture. Can you spot how he works the machine? Also in the same year, he was inspecting boot factories in Northampton. And the next year, he and his wife were present at an interesting procession of ancient and modern locomotives, which took place at Darlington to mark the railway centenary. This picture, taken 10 years ago, shows our king inspecting the Royal Arsenal at Woolwich, a rather depressed industry. Armaments is now one of the most flourishing industries in the world. The Papworth village settlement for tuberculosis sufferers, where patients are taught various trades. Our king and queen are watching the making of suitcases. At Middlesbrough, the king opens the wonderful vertical lift bridge across the Tees, linking Yorkshire to the north.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have much pleasure in declaring the Tees Newport Bridge open.
At Barrow in 1935, the Queen launches the liner Strathmore. Then she renames Barrow's Jubilee Bridge and dedicates it to public use.
I have much pleasure in declaring this bridge free from tow.
Here are pictures of an industry which is of greater economic importance than most people imagine. Women's fashions at the British Industries Fair. we may suppose that the Queen, who is accompanied by Lord Derby, finds this an easy duty.